order, adoption of agenda, one recommendation.
That council adopts the agenda.
Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Adoption of minutes.
No minutes to adopt.
New business.
My recommendation, that council review the Pooskookie Public Library Statement of Financial Information, SOFI, and receive for information and discussion.
Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Any questions? Mine?
Yeah, I have a few. Just have to remember those. Okay. We were looking at the SOFI, and the SOFI ending December 31st, 2020. Number one, how does the library cash at the end of the year end with the numbers 2019, 150,427, and 2020, 175,776.
Doug? Can you answer that?
Do you have the info?
It's in there, yeah. Can you repeat the question? I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Well, in the SOFI,
You have to remember that this is not ours. We don't
yeah,
control
I
this
know.
at all.
I know. But I don't know how to, I guess, interpret this. And that doesn't matter. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and page 6.
Yeah, cash. Under 2019, it says 150,427. And then 2020, it says 175,776. And how is that the amount of cash that they got on hand, or is it the amount of cash that they go through? Like, what is it?
This would come from their financial statements and would be cash that they had. So you can see from 2019 to 2020, they didn't spend all their cash. Some of that's fundraising revenue as well.
Oh, yeah. I was just asking, like, where it comes from.
Okay.
Have they completed their 2021? So they're still waiting on that, hey? Yes. So we don't have their current financials right now.
Any other question?
Right. So when budgeting, I don't understand, because when I was looking through that, Sophie, and then I'm looking at their proposed budget, like, how do they come up with these numbers that they're proposing?
Well, these numbers are their estimates.
Their estimates?
Yes. Yeah. All the budgets, any budget is an estimate of what is expected to happen during the year.
But it is an expectation that would be, okay.
Okay.
Do we not have on hand their actuals? Like, I see if you look at their budget, 2019, 2020, 2021, it's the same number carried over and over and over. Do we not have what they actually spent, though?
That's where the financial statements come into.
Yeah, we haven't received this year's financial statements from them yet, or 2021's.
Yeah.
They are complete, as far as I know.
Okay.
Okay.
I think my only concern is that, like, with the budget, so they're asking this year for $121,140 for the year, their budget. I think my only concern is that if they have between $175,000 and $150,000 in the bank, keeping in mind some of that is fundraising money, is there a point in time where, like, are they just gonna sit on money until they reach like $1 million mark? Or is there some point in time where, like, we start saying, you know what, like, you are doing quite well this year, we have a slew that is coming up, we have a bunch of stuff going on with the fire
We
department.
don't know what they've spent, we haven't seen their financials yet, so we really have no idea.
I think that's where my concern comes in, it's like, how
Do we know what their leftover cash is?
Do you know?
How much their leftover cash is?
So it would be the difference between each year.
Yeah, but are they, like,
Oh, I see, on this budget, okay, sorry.
yeah, the budget part, right? So if they have leftover cash of 121,140 is what they budgeted last year, do we know what they have for leftover cash? Did they give us a bank statement or?
We have bank statements, don't we?
I have a bank statement, yes.
Oh, and you don't know what the.
Currently what they have in the bank? Yeah, it's 114,000.
Your worship, can I offer a comment?
Yeah.
To help, hopefully not to confuse. As the central funding source, council, it's within council's authority to pass a policy that, number one, when they present their budget, that you ask that they do it with the previous year actual expenditures for each line item. That's the first step. The second step is you have the right, in my opinion, to tell them that you would like them to see, well, let me put it another way, that they may keep so much money in reserve and anything over and above should be integrated back in their operations, reducing the contribution from the village each year.
Yeah, that's what we were discussing here now.
Yeah. Sorry, that's what I was trying to get at, yeah.
So I was a bit late, sorry.
Pardon?
I was a bit late.
I know, we should have filled you in first before.
But, so you do, as a main funder, you can set some requirements for them to meet.
So they got 121,000 you said they had left over? No, they have 114,000?
Yes.
And then estimated costs from the, of what they did for volunteering and grants and stuff like that is 42,000. Right? Any questions, Barb?
Yes, I would like to see actuals. What was spent. And
Are you making a motion to see that, or?
yes, I make the motion that we actually have them in for actuals, or request actual,
You wanna see the actual financial statements, or you want the actuals?
the actuals.
We do have a time limit for this year.
I understand that, yeah.
Okay,
What is the time limit, Trina?
me?
2 weeks?
2 weeks. We bringing this back on Thursday?
Can we bring it back on Thursday to re-talk about this and actually see the actual?
We need a vote on Thursday. I mean, maybe Thursday or Friday? Thursday.
Thursday. 28th.
Your worship, is it possible for the resolution to put forward that it would take effect next year?
Next year? Yeah. I'm okay with that.
But just moving forward, since we're so late into the process, moving forward is what I think we may need to focus on.
But they have $114,000 in the bank, so, and they want 121,000, can we not just give them the difference?
They want 107 from us.
107, and they have 114?
Yes.
No, that's a lot of money. For something.
Did you not say 40 some odd thousand that was from their own fundraising? So wouldn't that, if they're carried over from us, it would be right around that $60,000 mark?
Yeah.
council make a motion to reduce the amount that they give to them?
Yeah, you can make a motion to. Okay, who wants to make that motion?
Just one sec, we need a seconder for the request of the actuals.
All in favor?
I can go to the next one.
Who's making that motion?
Which motion?
Motion slash the budget or cut the budget back or whatever it is. Marlene?
I'm not sure what the motion, I guess the motion would be to reduce,
Reduce the amount asked, the council needs to decide how much they want to reduce it by.
So you're saying, in light of the information provided, that council reduced their grant funding this year by $30,000, $20,000?
No, they got 114, and 43 of that is in that they collected themselves.
Yeah.
So the 114 minus the 43 is what they have of our money still.
Council reduced the library budget by.
Okay, so
Okay,
I make the motion that we reduce the library budget by $50,000 in light of financials.
can I get a seconder on that?
I'll second it and get it into discussion.
Discussion?
So, could we potentially amend that we look at what their reserve money is and we maintain their funding level at 125, 121, 107 that they're asking for, minus, like Doug had suggested, actually minus what their carryover is from last year. So if they carried over $50,000, say, then we reduce it by whatever their carryover is. Gets so that they still maintain that budgeted number that they're budgeted for, so they still have that same amount of money, so we're not screwing them over that way. But if they carry money over because we got to carry over through COVID, then we reduce whatever their carryover is.
Danny?
Is that not what that number does? Because technically they've carried over 64,000.
Yeah. With an amendment to it that we, going forward, that council reduces by whatever their carryover is. Going forward, then it allows us to, that number to be fluid as it changes each year. We don't have to do a motion for a specific number amount each year.
Ryan?
and wouldn't that be a policy that we're going to create?
Well, it'd be a policy. I think going forward, it'd be financially responsible to do that, because then it allows staff to budget accordingly. And we're not doing like we're doing now, 11th hour, trying to squeeze in extra meetings to get our shit in file.
I'd like to put a motion on the floor as well, that we.
No, we still have a
We
motion.
still have a motion that hasn't been voted on.
Sorry.
So do you want to defeat that motion of Marlene's, or?
Well, it's actually now Marlene, Danny's, and Marcel's. They all said
They've
the
all
same
got
thing.
motions.
They all said the same thing. So in light of the information produced, that council reduced the library budget by $50,000. That's what your motion is right now. You need to call it.
All in favor?
And that number's good.
They're currently carrying over $64,000. So they currently have carried over $64,000 in the previous year. So by reducing them by the 50, they're asking for 107. 107 reducing by 50 puts them at 57,000. On top of the 63,000, they're still in a high note, higher above than what they're asking. If you do
So
that,
they'll be fine.
they'll be totally fine. Yes.
Okay, I'm good.
That's 3 in favor, 4 in favor.
I'm opposed. The actuals are actually in our budget here, or our thing for 2020. So we could go from there. Okay?
I'd like to make a motion. Oh yeah, I'm doing it. Can't stop me. I'd like us to look into creating a policy, like what Doug had said, about making it so that the library does have a certain amount in their bank, but
Not
it's
just the library,
Well,
all
all-
entities of the village.
Yeah,
Not just
and-
picking on the library.
and then if that amount goes over that, then they carry it into their next year, so we're not looking at this.
So, can I ask a question? So what you're saying is, any surplus from the prior year is automatically brought into revenue, is that what you mean by carry forward?
Carried over.
Yeah, for the previous year, yeah.
Yeah, so you may want to word that as saying, the surplus from the prior year, from the prior year, you brought forward into revenue for the next year, and then the village would make up the difference.
For all.
Makes sense?
For all the fire department, the museum, the library, anybody that we give money to. Poultry house, anybody. No, we poultry house $5,000.
But we don't control.
But aren't you talking about things that are under our umbrella? Poultry house is not
Yes.
under ours. We would be talking the museum, the library, the fire department.
That's my motion.
Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Well, can we go to discussion on that?
Did you want to discuss?
Yeah, so the other thing that I put in there as a caveat is if one of the groups that's in the fire department or the museum or library is looking at capital expenditure, so like they're looking to buy a specific piece of equipment or expand something, that it'd be nice if, if they wanted to carry over that money or they're trying to save it, say Les wants to, update his countertops or something in there, right? And it's gonna cost more than he's got budgeted this year, and they save money from this year. If they have capital projects like that, is there a way we can work it in that they can put a request in that they can keep that money for the next year because it's allocated towards a project? Because I know from running a nonprofit organization that sometimes you gotta save money for a couple years in order to go to a bigger project, but you can't carry it over too long, right? So if we have something in there that they have to request to carry that money over without it, I don't know how we work that. And like if they got a capital project.
I don't know if we need to, like, we've been doing that with the fire department. They've been coming in and bringing in different things that have come up. Like I don't know if that really specifically needs to be worded in something. As long as they can show the amount of something is gonna cost, what they're doing with that money, then.
Or if they budgeted as future
Yeah,
costs
then-
for expansion.
I'm sure they're gonna know if they're gonna need new countertops or not, and that,
Yeah,
I'm
I've
pretty
seen
sure
that
when
as
we
an
go to do
example.
the budget, they'll be telling us that.
Can we just have this as staff draft something up and bring it back to you guys?
You betcha, Sandy, all in favor.
In May sometime?
Yep.
Can we vote on that then?
Yeah, we all in favor.
I would like to make a motion that we ask the library to give them next year their budget at an earlier date, not close, so that, and
UBC and Community Charter are the ones that set the date on when the budget is presented to organizations.
why do we do the fire department before year end? And
Because
then
that's the
district?
regional district that asks us for that.
Regional district.
Okay, but we can't ask from the library and the museum?
We can ask, but they don't necessarily have to produce it until the deadline. It's a government mandated
Okay,
deadline.
Hasn't this been here since February?
Number 2, recommendations.
That council received a report for information and discussion and an agreement adopt the budget as presented.
Can I get a second or
second?
discussion?
There's no page numbers, I apologize.
Thank you.
Sandy, you're slipping.
Are we looking at Schedule
Love
A?
you still.
We are looking at the report.
Oh, yes.
And those two schedules go with this report. Don't pay attention to the one that's in. Got that?
Yes.
Okay.
I want to thank you for the information that you've given us here about what we have in GICs, et cetera, That's good information, thank you.
Any questions?
And so, I'm reading this correctly. This is with the 3.5 taxation we talked about, is Schedule A? Or Trina? Or is this-
Please direct all financial questions to Doug and
talk
Trina.
and discuss what we've already discussed regarding these options.
I can talk now?
Please,
You're allowed to talk.
this is why he's here.
Yes.
Not to say I'm on a short leash.
Pardon?
Not to say that I'm on a short leash.
Oh, yeah, they probably have you on first.
I'm sorry, I went to Jess and I, on the coast, everything is coming in bloom at the same time.
Oh, and then he rubs it in.
Well, I had to get the heck out of it, so I couldn't breathe. I'm still congested. I was a lot better yesterday, I'm a lot better today, and hopefully tomorrow I'll even be better, but I was so clogged up, I couldn't believe it. I've never had a reaction, and all my neighbors are saying the same thing. So, I'll try and talk a little louder.
Okay.
So we were given, we had out today, first on this page here, this is the wrong page. The loose ones are the ones we want to talk about. And the reason why I like these ones is because we're talking about, why do I have two different scenarios? Yes, but I brought mine in and I was given one here, so it doesn't take much to confuse me these days. So the first one shows the 941,000 deficit. That's the first page. It's a bit shocking. It's a bit shocking, and it's a bit of a kick in the teeth, isn't it?
Yes.
So, for 2022, you'll see that there's a 10% figure at the top, right under 2022. That represents the tax increase from last year to this year. So it gives us 402,692.
You didn't go 10%.
I'm just giving a scenario, just for discussion.
10%.
You asked us to present scenarios, can we let Doug finish?
I am.
So, in this scenario, I'm trying to give not just the impact for 2022, but the impact for the next 5 years. This is a 5-year plan, not just a 1-year plan. So, walking through this, what we've done is we've kept the numbers fairly the same, except for taxes. And then down below, you'll see one number by itself there, transfers from reserves. It's 435,000. And on your page following that's the amounts we're suggesting if you put on reserves. Well, I'm just go to that page now. So we have the different funding sources. It's always important to look at this kind of a schedule and how it's going to be funded. So you can see we have the Peace River agreement as 1.094 million. And against each of these projects, we're suggesting where the funding for each project can come from. Okay. So the columns to the right indicate where the funding is. In this case, we're only dealing with 2022 as a year. So we're trying to fund 2022. We'll get to the other years in just a few minutes. So, I don't know if you want to go line by line. You can, okay. So the paved sewer fixed on 48, 49th, and 54, 30,000. That can come from the Peace River agreement. The update zoning bylaw would have to come from surplus. Unless we got a grant for it, but I don't think there's a grant for that.
For what, Doug? I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'll try and talk up.
Yeah, where does the grant come from?
Well, I don't know,
Oh,
but if we could find a grant, then we could use the grant instead of, our surplus. STAR's donation would be coming from general surplus. Safety, sorry,
Asset management.
did I forget asset management?
you
Oh, geez.
did.
Ugh,
But doesn't UBCM have grants for that? Asset management?
If you look to the right,
if you look to the far right, under the grants column,
Oh, yeah, okay.
there's 15,000 there.
There you go.
So I think we're in the same boat tonight.
Yeah, we are.
Have some more coffee.
I will.
STAR's donation would be a surplus. The safety quote for fire hall would come out of the Peace River agreement.
But that half of it's been already paid from, in the 2021 year.
no,
Well, no, it's not. It's been withheld, right?
Was the amount,
Half of it was paid.
this is for the.
half of it has
resurfacing.
not been paid.
Yeah, but he was paid half of it.
No, he wasn't.
No.
He has not been paid half.
So he's not been paid anything.
He's been paid 10% or something, $9,000. That's what he's been paid. And this $70,000 is to have the floor completely redone.
The feasibility study for the drainage is coming from the Peace River agreement. The professional sound system for council chamber is gonna come
COVID money, right?
from grant, from the COVID money.
Yeah.
Anything we can use from the COVID money, we're gonna hit.
Yeah, I figured so. Thought I'd ask.
Crack sealing, asphalt patching, normally that's 100,000. Since we were preoccupied with sewer last year, it didn't get done, so the decision was to double it for this year. And that can come out of the gas tax money.
Okay.
The solid waste RFP, which unfortunately didn't go ahead, that can come out of general surplus. The emergency response plan would come from the Peace River agreement. The RCMP capture program would be out of surplus. The fire hall second floor fire escape roof.
The RCMP capture program can be moved off to 2023 because they haven't got it done yet.
Oh,
Yeah, so that can be moved. I thought we discussed that with him that night he was here. I talked to him.
well, just in case they get their act together and get it in, we can leave it in. There's no harm in leaving it in.
Yeah.
The fire hall second floor escape route can come from the Peace River agreement. The land development manual would come out of surplus. The new website would come out of grants, which would be the COVID money. Okay. The removal for vegetation from lagoon would come out of sewer surplus. The lagoon project, most of it could come out of the Peace River area agreement, and the remainder would come out of sewer surplus, which would be 17,590. That was my math error. So it's 17, not 67.
Okay.
Fire department radios can come out of the Peace River agreement if we don't find a grant for that somewhere else.
Yeah.
The steamer public works out of the Peace River agreement. The sound system for the fire department, again, out of COVID money. And the decontamination shower would come out of the Peace River agreement. So we would expend the total Peace River agreement. We would spend 48,200 out of the general surplus, 42,590 out of the sewer surplus. Gas tax money would spend 200,000.
Doug, can you tell me how much we get for gas tax? Can you remember that off the top of your head?
I remember the gas tax funding so far has what, 400,000
Yes.
so far, Nina? There's change, but around 400, 432 or something like that. The reserve for future expenditure for municipal equipment is the reserve. We're gonna spend 15 out of that, and we're gonna spend 105,000 out of the reserve, which is mainly the COVID money. So those are the funding sources.
What is general surplus? You keep saying, okay, I know what Peace River's agreement is, I know what sewer, gas tax, municipal equipment. Why don't we, the steamer go into municipal equipment, and what is general surplus?
If we wanted to move the steamer to municipal equipment, we could certainly do that. The general surplus is the surplus amount in general government.
Do we have a surplus? Is there such a thing with us?
Yes.
What? I'm not understanding.
Well, look at the column for general surplus. You follow that down past the 48,200. So this is finished this schedule. I think I can answer some questions. So at the very top of that general surplus is 3.4 million.
Yeah.
That's what's in surplus right now.
Are you talking about our GICs, or
No, that's separate.
is that?
This is part of it, yes.
Pardon me?
It's part of the GSCs, yes, but not all of it.
So we're calling the GIC surplus?
That's where the surplus is invested.
Yeah, okay.
So after we spend that amount from the general surplus, we're gonna have a balance of 3.448 million. At the very bottom of this column, right down here.
Yeah.
So I'm subtracting what we're taking from the balance above and giving you an amount that would remain after using those funds.
That's the 2771429.
Well, no, right now it'd be the 3.448 million.
The first one first.
Okay. Or remaining amount. Okay.
Right. So let's go back to this sheet, because this sheet here is summarized on this sheet here as capital and special projects. It's a one-line item. That leaves us with all the expenses in of 4.4 million of a deficit of $941,000. So I just want to stay on this page because this is a pretty big kick in the teeth.
Mhm.
And it's not as big as the one last year,
Yes.
but still, I would like to add that the kick in the teeth that appears here, I haven't altered the 2021 budget amounts.
So what?
Sorry, I have not amended the 2021 column.
Okay.
So let's just look at capital and special projects of 2,034,000. 1.5 of that was for a new fire hall, which did not go ahead. So the kick in the teeth was only like 167,000 deficit. So to be fair, I want to be representative that the kick in the teeth really is 2022. It's not, I don't want you thinking you're taking two kicks in the teeth last year and this year, it's just this year. It's bad enough as it is.
Oh, yes.
Now, that would reduce our ability, that reduces all these various reserves and surplus as well. Right, so surplus then would be reduced further from 3.4 million down almost $1 million. Let's look at the future year, 2023. This is a 5-year plan. And it's important we keep in mind that we need a 5-year plan, just not a 1-year plan. So if there's a 5% increase, and I'm just supposing, I'm just showing you the impact your policies can have in future years when you make them today. That's all I'm trying to demonstrate here. I know the mayor's kind of cringing at another 5% increase. Just
Well, I don't mind raising the taxes, but we also gotta take in effect that there's people here living in Pooskoopi that are just scraping by,
Yes.
right? We need to take that into consideration.
And another consideration you need to consider is that when we analyze a homeowner grant, how many people are paying the minimum amount required and not using their full homeowner grant?
Yeah.
We need to research that too. So in fairness to those people who are scraping by, a lot of them are not using the full homeowner grant. Now, that's not justification or is not an excuse to just increase taxes
No.
out of hand. I mean, it needs to, some consideration needs to be given, definitely. Yeah, I'd never argue against that.
Pardon?
I'd never argue against that. Now, with 2023, if there's a 5% increase, I just want to slide down to the bottom of the expenditures. There you have 85,000 for special and capital projects, and now you're transferring 82,000 to reserves.
I like that.
Now you're replenishing. In places where I've worked before, if a department head was saying, I want to use reserves for this project, the number one question is, how do you propose paying that reserve back? Because you can't use the money if you don't have a plan to replenish.
Right.
So, and I'm just applying that to us. And in this case, it's a tax increase. Even without a tax increase, the tax increase is approximately $20,000. So you'd only be putting in
What is the average homeowner pay? What would an average homeowner pay? Like, that's what I wanna know, so then the residents ask us.
Well, you'll be given that, yeah.
You know, my house is valued at $565,000, say, when my house is, but let's say, there is houses that sold for $565,000. What is the tax that they would have to pay on that? Right?
Yeah, we can determine that.
Okay.
We have the ability.
I know you do.
We've done it many times. Whatever policies come in place, we would provide counsel with the average homeowner. We need to do that anyway, because the problem is, after we pass our bylaws, require us to fill out some survey they do about the impact on the average homeowner.
Yeah.
So they call it the representative homeowner, which is the average homeowner. So yes, quite doable.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to demonstrate with increases in taxation in 2024, a 3% increase. Plus, we have other operating expenses. We're still able to contribute $71,559 to reserve. The next year, 162,000 into reserve, and of course, 2026, 39,000 into reserve. So,
I like those ones. I really like those ones. Which one are you gonna hand up first?
Doesn't matter.
Dan?
So looking at these numbers, so this year, we're showing a deficit of 941,384.
yes.
And then for 2023, 2024, 2025, that deficit is just disappearing. So we're taking that money out of our reserves and slowly replenishing it back in,
Yes.
which I think is fantastic. But we're still looking at the number of 941,384.
Yes.
There's another scenario of 191,384.
Hey, you're not allowed to skip ahead, Your Worship. Stay to the game plan.
Stay to the fun. Well, where's that?
So let's go to page 2.
Yeah.
Nice segue in, thank you very much. Sorry,
Mark?
I'll try and be patient.
Marlene, what's your question?
Oh, Marlene,
Yeah. My question was, for capital and special projects, that number is substantial.
Mhm.
And that leaves for future councils not much wiggle room for being able to deal with anything that comes up that they may find necessary. And are all of these things quite necessary that we have to go to that amount?
The main kicker for this year is the lagoon project.
I see that, yes, and that is necessary.
That's substantial.
Totally.
And you are correct. The best gift this council could leave the next council coming in is a budget that not only works, but it's important that a budget be sustainable.
Mhm.
Now, we couldn't do this every year, but it has to be sustainable. And right now, 2022 is not sustainable. I have to stress that. But then recognizing council needs to make an informed decision. And the informed decision you can make is that for this year, we are going to dip into some reserves and services fairly deeply in order to accomplish what we need to do. So if you don't mind, I'd just like to deviate just a little bit, if I can. The lagoon project is the lagoon project is very, very important. If that goes into the river, the 750,000 is going to look like peanuts. If there's a breach of that wall, which we know is failing, if that breaches, then your fines are going to start at approximately $3 to $4 million.
Oh, yeah, you need our reserves up in no time.
And not to mention that the CAO at the time and the mayor would be
Held accountable.
cooling your heels in jail.
Huh? What?
Yeah, bye.
Because if we don't
Extremely
deal with it, it
serious.
should have been dealt with.
It's extremely serious, and that's why I'm not willing to back down on the 750. It's needed.
Oh, I would never back down on that.
And we can debate that for as long as you like. But this is a requirement. If you're going to cancel anything, cancel everything else, but not the 750. If there's one thing left standing in this lane budget, it would be the 750. Has to.
Keep Sandy out of jail.
That's your get out of jail.
Sandy, we're making a holiday.
Okay.
I wonder if you guys would be
There
salty.
isn't enough alcohol in jail. They don't give you
True,
any.
that's true.
I'm just.
So that's not gonna happen, we're gonna fix it.
Well, that would happen if you're showing absolute gross negligence, which we are not. So we are going to budget this. So that proves we're not being negligent. Don't worry, that's where you get your dental work done in jail.
She's just squirming over there.
So let's go to page 2. Thank you for the segue from Council Beach. Same numbers, except for in the revenue, last number, debt proceeds, 750,000. Everybody got it? Yeah. So that's us saying, hey, Chapman, yeah, you're gonna budget 750, but it's not gonna come out of surplus. It's gonna come out of borrowing. We're gonna borrow that money. So the impact then will be 191,384 coming out of surplus and reserves. So it is possible to borrow for it. Now, when you borrow money, you're renting money. You're gonna pay for it. You're gonna pay anywhere between 3 and 4%, probably higher now that interest rates are going. versus using some of your surplus money that you're earning between 1.8 and 2% on. You're better off not borrowing and using some of those reserves to pay that $750. You do not borrow money if you do not have to.
Exactly.
Especially if interest rates are gonna continue to go up for the next 2 years.
So I'm just trying to show you that with your use reserves or borrow money, and I want to come back to the borrowing money. So I haven't finished harping on that yet. You still put money aside into surplus. With the special projects, the debt funding for that is going to come out of the sewer operating. And it's going to be a hit on that budget again. When it comes to borrowing money, the province changed the formula on how they calculate it. We have a borrowing capacity limit. So we are limited on what we can borrow. Unfortunately, but that's the way it is.
I like that.
It used to be based solely on assessed values and then an amount to be borrowed. They changed it in around 2002, I think it was, where they started, and a lot of us CAOs at the time argued against it because it's irrelevant, it's inaccurate. But basically, what they do is to say they take into consideration your internally generated revenue, so your water, your sewer, your taxes. So the more you raise, the more you can borrow, which doesn't make sense. Because the more you raise than that, the less ability you have to pay debt. So it's counterintuitive. We lost your argument. The village, Kuskookee, has a borrowing capacity. It's not in dollar amount, but it's in total debt payment. And as the interest rate goes up, the amount you can borrow decreases. That's what they were after. They wanted to have the ability to pay based on what you could pay. So I did the government reporting firms last year. I think it was $600,000, $630,000 in total debt payments. So they would allow us to borrow a sum of money that the borrowing was going to be $600,000 a year. That's a year. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So don't borrow this money.
No.
Have I ragged on you enough about your borrowing?
We don't believe in borrowing.
No, I don't either. Because borrowing for using surplus is it's like a surfer. When you borrow money, you're behind the wave, and you're paddling to catch up to the wave. If you do not borrow money, you're ahead of the wave, and you can ride that wave. So I want us to ride that wave, not paddle. Have I finished?
Good job.
I'm totally finished.
You're totally finished?
Bart?
I have a question, or a couple of questions. 2021 general government. We had unexpected costs in 2021 of staff going on medical leave and they're on leave, they're still on salary, and other people coming in. So that was an added expense for 21. And yet 22 is even higher. Can you explain that to me?
I'm just trying to remember some of the details. I can look it up, but I can't recall off the top of my head.
Okay, I'm just asking because it's going up higher.
There's consulting in there. I think the consulting was around 60,000. Legal fees were in there as well.
137,000 or 136.
For which?
For legal fees was 136,000.
Well, that's, no, I'm talking about 2022. Oh, recall?
These are also, this is the budgeted amount, not actuals.
Great. Good
Sorry,
point.
the actual is not included in there.
2021 is just budget, not action.
Oh, okay. Now, is there any other item on here in the budget that we could cut back on? Is there anything that we can cut? Yeah.
Council's wages.
Sorry, what was that, Commissioner?
Okay. Council's wages. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, no. I disagree with that. I'll tell you why.
Why?
What does the counselor make?
10,000.
I think 10,500, something like that. If you consider the time you put in, well, actually, don't do the calculation. I have calculated it before in other places. And for the money you earn, for the time coming to the meetings, time preparing, reading the agendas, and so forth, you're probably earning maybe $1.35 an hour. So, no, that's not feasible. There's one possible saving, just off the top of my head, is environmental health. In the special projects, there's $3,200 for an RFP. So you may want to get your garbage and recycling that's collected using an RFP and maybe lowering the amount you're paying out.
Well, I thought we were doing that, Sandy. Thought we were getting an RFP for
Yeah,
the.
well, when that comes in, right, you get a contractor who hopefully is going to do it for less.
Yeah.
So that is hopefully a saving. I can tell you that the environmental health thing, 115,609, was assuming no change. So that's the worst case scenario. It's a conservative approach. If you save money on that, all the better. But if you're going to save money, it's not going to be, hundreds of thousands. It's going to be maybe, $30,000 to $40,000, but we'll take that.
$1.
Because we're spending beyond our revenue, because the Peace River agreement is supposed to be for capital projects, and we're using it.
The Peace River Agreement was first negotiated with the province.
Yes.
And it was based on the efforts, and it included capital, of communities accommodating the, for lack of a better term, the oil industry.
Resource industries.
Resource extractors were outside of municipal boundaries. So here's the complication of that. So I'll explain a little better, hopefully, and I'll try to speak up. Yeah, I just remembered. Municipalities and the regional districts were saying, hey, province, you're allowing these people to come in and extract a huge amount of resources. You're getting royalties out of the yin yang. Those people are coming into our communities and using our facilities.
Our hospitals, our roads,
Hospitals, bowling alleys, roadways, recreation facilities, and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. So if there's a demonstrated increased cost in, say, recreation facilities, you have more people in the pool swimming. I know we don't have a pool, but it's following along.
You don't even mention.
No. But you're having more people in the pool, which requires you to hire more lifeguards. Because there are standards that for so many people in the pool, you have to have so many lifeguards. So that's not a capital cost, it's an operating cost. But it's an operating cost that can be associated with excess use of the facilities over and above what was ordinarily used. So most of the expenditures were thought to be capital, but they're not all capital. So yes, it's typically used for capital, but it doesn't necessarily, unless if you can demonstrate that it is some of it is used, because of the excess use of extra people coming in, you can use it for that purpose. Typically, it is capital, but not all the time.
I agree, but I don't think we're getting that added stress from oil and gas. If they're here, they're buying homes, they're paying taxes, they're paying
Living
their
in the
fair share.
hotel, they're living in the apartments over there, they're living over in
And the
that
people
apartment.
with the hotel are paying their taxes, their,
Oh, no, it's a burden on the community. Oh, yeah.
well, I would like to know where we can cut back on.
Good question. I mean, I can go through,
Go ahead, go through.
but right this immediate moment, I'm not,
Can Marlene ask her question first?
yes, you bet.
Marlene?
Well, I'm going to answer you, like, if cutting back and it's our capital and special projects, wouldn't it make sense to eliminate some of these?
Well, some of them are already done.
Yes, I realize that.
So should do what?
Wouldn't it make sense to eliminate some of these capital and special projects and not the lagoon?
Every day occurrence, or every meeting
I
occurrence.
guess it's an all-sided tape on that paperwork.
Well, significant changes haven't made already.
Have they? Okay.
Yes. You don't like the first version.
Oh.
I guarantee you that.
Yeah,
The last one was 1.3 that we were looking at, and now it's down to 941.
I like 141, or 191. Danny?
Like going back to what Councilor Smith and Councilor Heber are saying, you know, we have pretty extensively gone through this list. We spent 4 meetings going through this list, picking out everything we could pick out, weeding out the things we felt really weren't that important for this year and bumping them for next year. And so I know that we spent a month weeding through this list to get it to where it's at now. And as I guess like some of these things aren't completed, as Mayor McKenny had said, and you know, in the 4 meetings we spent weeding through this list, knowing that some of these things were either on second phase, like the assistant management plan, that's already on phase 2. Some of those things we had to carry forward with as well. So don't forget that. Don't undermine the fact that we did spend 4 meetings, 2 months going through the list.
Marlene?
and now we're looking at these schedules and we're saying that our next council, boy, I'm sorry, we've spent everything that we could. We looked for 4 months, but I'm sorry, we couldn't do any better than this.
Your worship, can I answer to that?
Yeah.
Please do.
Pretend I'm on a new council
Okay,
and you didn't do something about it.
okay,
I'd say, how dare you leave me in a position of having to look after your screw up?
exactly.
Well, this is a screw up we can fix right now, and we need to get on it now. We can't delay it a year.
Yeah.
We cannot.
Exactly.
Okay,
And if I would bet if this council had the unfortunate circumstances saying we're not gonna fund it, I would not be surprised to see the Ministry of Environment take us to court and have the court order us to budget for it. Don't put
you're
yourself-
talking the lagoon though.
That's what most of our cost is lagoon.
Yeah, but I'm talking like, I'm looking at this steamer and, you know, just things like that. If we could take off those little extras. Marcel.
So, stuff like the steamer, correct me if I'm wrong, that's a budgeted amount if something else goes ahead, right? If we don't get that truck, then we're not spending that money, it's just a budget, we're not committed
It's
to
a
that.
budget item.
Right, and then the other one is the $10,000 to starters, that was a 3-year commitment, that's what they, 2 years ago.
Last year.
Or last year was a 3-year commitment they made for that, right? And so there's nothing we can do about that.
Well, that is,
And that's a good.
I think that
We get about $100,000 from the regional district
the
already.
feasible study as well, that was on its second year. Yeah, second phase. A lot of these things,
They're
we were
carryovers.
committed
Yeah.
2 years ago. that they were all committed to, we had, like, we have to carry them forward.
Council committed to before we even got elected.
Before you even out.
Bart,
We have, a couple months ago, we made the motion to donate $1,600 to different organizations. What is the total that you have in the budget for this year, and can we cut that back? We don't have money to give away. I'm just throwing it out there.
That was under the council expenses, I don't have the actual, it's in general government.
If you want, if it helps, when you carry on with the rest of your meeting, we'll have a look.
thank you, Doug. Ben?
Adding to that donation of 1,600 that you bring up, a large majority of that was to Indigenous groups. That's all part of reconciliation. That's all part of what communities and municipalities need to do to take in our part of reconciliation. That's part of the 94 calls to action. I'm just throwing that out there. I was the one that brought forward those donations to those foundations because that's part of our commitment. to those
Okay,
entities.
I'm not saying that it was.
That's fine,
asking.
I'm just reaffirming that.
The donations we give is fairly restrictive, and I'm gonna say minimal, but you know, looking at the list, it's a well thought out list. It's not extensive. It's not a lot.
Okay, I'm just throwing out ideas to think where we can cut back from.
Yeah.
So, Doug, now as you've sort of completed that aspect of things, one thing that like we as council have been bouncing around is the taxes, is looking at taxes, looking at those numbers. So I've been sitting here playing with these numbers. So, Sandy, am I correct in saying we have roughly 380 properties in Piscopee? Roughly? Trina, am I correct in that? 380?
Yeah.
So doing the math, at 380 homes, if we were to raise the taxes by 5%, it would cost $48.17 to each home a year. Well, yeah, see, I'm not a math.
It's all based on.
It's all based on.
Assessment.
I mean, basically, in an order of magnitude,
Yeah,
it's close.
it's pretty close though, isn't it? Yeah. And then 3% would be roughly around $30. That's probably pretty close. Again, I'm not a mathematician, but I think I'm not half bad. And then 10% would be around $96. Well, around $100. Does that seem correct?
I'd say it's in the ballpark.
That's within the ballpark. So we're looking at an increase of around $50 per household, $100 per household, or $30 per household, when we're really ballparking those numbers.
Yeah, $100 a year of households less than $10 a month. So.
I know that nobody wants to raise taxes, but in the position.
Well, I mean, you gotta raise the taxes, but remember, years prior, they never raised taxes, so now we're catching up.
I know.
Right, and we're trying to be able to function.
I know.
So, and I don't wanna gouge the residents of Piscopee with
No,
a huge bill when they're just trying to buy groceries to be able to eat.
and that's where, I know that council has been raising the taxes 2% per year, trying to stay on top of inflation, and we have not been able to stay on top of inflation with a 2% increase. And our community, at the rate at which we're going, yes, okay, we have reserves and all that, and that's great, but if the inflation keeps going up and up and our taxes aren't high enough, it's great to say we have one of the second lowest taxes in all of British Columbia. That's third lowest, sorry, thank you, Doug. We have the third lowest taxes in all of British Columbia, and that's a great badge to wear, but not when our streets are cracking, not when our slough is crumbling, not when not when everything else is going on, right? It sounds great to say we have the lowest taxes and third in British Columbia, but we are literally on the verge of standing in our own feces. So we need to look at the numbers. So going to the conversation. What do you think? Those are the ballpark numbers I worked out. $50, $100, $30.
I'm not sure about the $100.
I know.
That's high.
I'm not a mathematician. I was trying. I'm an elementary school
10%
teacher, I'm gonna be honest. I don't do grade 2 enough.
The 10% would be what? On a $500,000 home.
Well, I have to calculate the tax rate.
Okay, we'll continue on, and then we'll come back to that. Can you calculate that?
Do you have tax rates? On the assessments?
Yeah.
I warn you, doing this quickly.
Because I'm not passing a budget if I do not know what a house is going to be paying, for property tax. I'm sorry. I need actual numbers of how much someone's gonna pay.
And I sympathize with that. I can't argue against it, but the question is, doing these calculations quickly can be dangerous. So,
Pull up Lorraine McKetty's property. Pull that up. Have a boo at it.
I will, that's
Okay.
probably the only $1 million house we have.
No bullshit.
So,
Can we bring this back next meeting, or do we need to do this meeting?
Well, it says it has to be passed, Sandy.
I
Oh,
don't
it
think you guys
says-
do it this meeting, can
Because this is
council-
coming back, right?
did
Yeah.
you-
We're
did-
bringing,
It's back.
adopt the budget as presented. So we can bring it back, so we can table it.
You guys are in
For
agreement.
information and discussion.
And in agreement
we
to
have-
adopt the budget as presented.
Can we have a CIO work forum where we can go over this?
Yeah.
I don't know if we need a special meeting, if you can call a special meeting, I'm here until, I know you hate this.
It's just when.
It's gonna be tomorrow.
Well, we got 3
fair
meetings
enough.
in 1 week?
On a deadline.
Yeah, welcome to council.
If,
I'm a mom, sorry.
Bring your kids.
bring your kids,
Please don't,
We'll bring our dogs.
please don't.
I mean, I could have the calculations ready for tomorrow afternoon, or tomorrow evening.
Okay.
Um,
So tomorrow at 7?
Any way we can do it
Or-
earlier?
Earlier, okay, what's tomorrow?
Tomorrow's Wednesday? No, tomorrow's Tuesday.
But it's not gonna take long.
Can we do 5 o'clock?
I can be here anytime.
4 o'clock better?
I'm a businesswoman, I can leave anytime.
Yeah.
Consensus,
So I
4
can go
o'clock or
early.
5 o'clock?
4:30.
4:30?
To watch my children.
Okay, 4:30, CAO workshop.
Tomorrow?
All in favor?
Is that tomorrow?
And we're tabling this budget till tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Until Thursday.
So,
I don't have a license.
Can we vote on this then tomorrow, or we'll vote on it then
It
Thursday?
has to do it
Has to
in the
be
meeting.
Thursday.
Has to be Thursday.
So tomorrow you guys can present all the questions you've asked, right?
Yeah.
Is there any more questions?
As long
You
as
just
I
wanna know what the tax rate, how it looks to.
Per household.
Okay, and then we will bring this back for adoption.
the options are gonna be 2%,
3.5.
oh yeah, okay, 3.5,
It was 3.5 we started with,
Yeah.
5%,
9% and 10.
and
and
10.
8%. Barb wanted 8%.
Or one. Oh, no, I don't remember that.
No, we don't like
8%.
8%, we're not gonna
No.
do.
Okay, pick 3 choices.
3.5, 5, and 10.
3.5, 5, and 10. Those are the numbers we're currently looking at.
Okay,
One in the middle, one low, and one high.
The other thing to add to that too is what the projected inflation's gonna be this year too.
All in
So
favor,
we
that
can
we table
kind
it
of
for
try
tomorrow
and
night.
keep pace with that.
well, the
I
current.
don't think Barbara even heard what was being said.
We're tabling it for tomorrow night, all in favor.
Sorry, is that okay?
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I'll have these,
I'm gonna reiterate what Trina just said, have no life, it's budget time, it's all good.
well, I'm here, I just want to be as productive as I can.
As long as we can move on to the next issue at hand, and hopefully,
Because we're
issue,
not done.
yes, we have.
Point of order.
Bylaws, one point recommendation.
That council give first reading to the water utility rates regulations bylaw 1033, 2022.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? 2, recommendation.
That council give second reading to water utility rates regulations bylaw 10/33/2022.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Marlene? That council gives second reading, or re-recommendation?
That council give third reading to water utility rates regulations bylaw 10/33/2022.
Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? For recommendation?
That council give first reading to sewer charges and regulations bylaw 10/36/2022.
Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? 5 recommendation?
That council give second reading to sewer charges and regulations bylaw 10/36/2022.
Can I get a seconder?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? 6 recommendation?
The council gave the third, reading to sewer changes and regulations by law 1036/2022.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Number 6. Right?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'm gonna be busy tomorrow, aren't I?